It started as a challenge. My girlfriend dared me to get her cousin to agree to one date. I thought it would be easy, but somewhere along the way, I forgot I was trying to win, and that's when everything went wrong. Jenna and I had been together for almost a year when I met her cousin, Estelle. It happened at a family anniversary party. I had spent most of the evening smiling at relatives whose names I couldn't remember, when Jenna suddenly looked toward the entrance. Wow, Estelle actually came. I followed her eyes. A woman had just walked in alone. She greeted Jenna's aunt, hugged a couple of relatives, then quietly joined a group near the patio. Your cousin? Yeah, she lives a couple hours away. You haven't met her. I watched her for a moment. She always come alone? Jenna gave me a look. Don't start. What? I know you. I laughed. I asked a question. A little later, I saw a guy approach Estelle. He was clearly interested. She talked to him pleasantly for a minute or two, but whatever he was trying didn't get very far. Soon he walked away, and Estelle returned to her drink as though nothing had happened. Jenna caught me watching. Don't even think about it. I turned to her. Think about what? That one's out of your league. I laughed. Excuse me? Estelle isn't like me. What's that supposed to mean? She isn't easy to impress. I stared at Jenna. Do you think you were easy? Her mouth opened. I was not easy. Jenna, please. I made you work. For about 3 weeks. She hit my arm. You're such an ass. I laughed. Jenna nodded toward Estelle. I'm serious. Your usual charm wouldn't work on her. My usual charm worked pretty well on you. Exactly my point. I looked at Estelle again. What makes her so special? Nothing. She's just different. Very private. Very independent. She barely dates. She doesn't post anything about her personal life. Half the family calls her a feminist because every time someone asks when she's getting married, she tells them she doesn't need a man to make her life complete. Sounds reasonable. It is, but men have tried. She doesn't impress easily. Jenna smiled. You wouldn't stand a chance. Now I knew she was teasing me. You really think so? I know so. I could get a date with her. Jenna burst out laughing. With Estelle? One date. No chance. Want to bet? She stared at me for a moment. Then her smile changed. All right. I hadn't expected that. All right, what? Let's see how charming Marcus really is. You're challenging me? One date. Get Estelle to agree to go out with you. I laughed. You're serious? Absolutely. And what do I get? The privilege of telling me I was wrong for the rest of my life. That might be worth it. Jenna shook her head. There are rules. Of course there are. She can't know you're my boyfriend. Well, obviously. And you're not kissing her or doing anything stupid. You get her to say yes to a date. That's it. Challenge over. I held out my hand. One date. Jenna looked at my hand, then at me. You're actually going to do this? You're the one who said she's out of my league. She laughed and shook my hand. Fine. One date. Then she nodded toward the patio. Estelle was standing alone. Go on then. Right now? What's wrong? Losing confidence already? I smiled. Watch and learn. I started toward Estelle. Behind me, Jenna called quietly, Good luck. You're going to need it. At that moment, none of it felt serious. Jenna wanted to watch me fail. I wanted to prove that I wouldn't. And Estelle was simply the woman standing between me and winning a stupid challenge. That was all she was. At least, that's what I believed when I walked toward her. I didn't flirt with Estelle that night. Jenna had already told me that was exactly what every other man tried, so I decided to take a different route. I introduced myself as a friend of one of Jenna's friends and asked what she did. Corporate attorney. I nodded. That explains it. Explains what? The way you talk. How do I talk? Like everything I say could be used against me later. A small smile appeared. Only if you say something stupid. That sounds like a threat. Free legal advice. I laughed. My company was dealing with a vendor contract at the time, so I used it. We talked about work for a while, and eventually she handed me her card. Email me the clause. I'll tell you if you actually need a lawyer. More free legal advice? No. Free advice about whether you need paid legal advice. There she is. Who? The lawyer. She rolled her eyes. Then she asked about my job. I gave her my standard answer. Good company, good position, decent money. You like it? Sure. Why? I just told you. No, you told me why it's a good job. I looked at her. She waited. Something about that silence made me answer properly. My dad lost his business when I was 17. I hadn't intended to tell her that. For a couple of years, everything at home was about money. So when I graduated, I wasn't looking for some dream career. I wanted stability. Estelle nodded. You didn't want to feel helpless again. That was closer to the truth than what I'd said. Something like that. She smiled slightly. That answer I believe. Before I could respond, someone called her away. I watched her leave, then looked at the card in my hand. I'd gotten what I wanted, a way to contact her. A few days later, I emailed the contract. She replied with exactly what she'd promised. I thanked her. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I found myself near her office later that week. Not accidentally. I messaged her. Do corporate attorneys get lunch, or is eating considered billable time? She replied, Depends. Are you paying? 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a cafe. I thought this was my opening. It wasn't. Estelle was perfectly comfortable with me, but there was nothing romantic in it. Every time I pushed slightly in that direction, she somehow moved the conversation somewhere else without openly rejecting me. Still, we became friends, and once that happened, talking to her became strangely easy. A message about work became a joke became a conversation. Soon we were messaging several times a week without needing a reason. Jenna kept asking for updates. Any progress? Plenty. Date? Not yet. She laughed. Maybe you finally met your match. I always win. A few nights later, I repeated that line to Estelle. We were talking on the phone when she laughed. You really do hate losing, don't you? I don't hate losing, I just don't do it often. That's worse. How? Because I think you need to win. I laughed. There. What? You do that every time. Do what? Make a joke when somebody gets too close. I went quiet. She continued casually. You're very good at talking about yourself without actually revealing much. I wanted to dismiss it. Instead, I asked, And you figured all this out already? I'm a lawyer. I listen for what's missing. I smiled, but that line stayed with me. Our conversations changed after that. Or maybe I did. She would ask something ordinary about my work, my family, what I wanted from life, and somehow I'd find myself giving her answers I normally kept to myself. At first, I thought I was being strategic. If I opened up, she would open up. And she did. But slowly, I stopped keeping score. One night, we talked for nearly 2 hours. Afterward, I realized I'd told her something about my father that I'd never even told Jenna. That should have bothered me. Instead, I felt strangely lighter. Estelle never made a big thing out of anything I told her. She listened, sometimes challenged me, sometimes told me something about herself in return, and I liked it. I liked talking to her far more than I was willing to admit. The next evening, Jenna asked, How's my impossible cousin? Still impossible. Giving up? I smiled. Never. But the truth was, somewhere along the way, I'd stopped thinking about the date. I was thinking about when Estelle and I would talk again. Our conversations had become longer without either of us noticing. That evening, we'd been talking for nearly 2 hours. Estelle told me about a case she'd worked on years ago, then somehow wandered into a story about getting lost on a family vacation when she was 12. I barely spoke for several minutes. I just listened. She was laughing at herself by the end of it, and I found myself smiling too. There was something about hearing her like that, relaxed, unfiltered. I suddenly imagined sitting across from her somewhere quiet, no phone between us, no reason to end the conversation because it was getting late. Just an entire evening. Her stories. That smile. Maybe dinner. Estelle? Hmm? Would you like to have dinner with me Friday? There was no plan behind it. I didn't calculate the timing. I didn't think about Jenna. I didn't even think about the challenge. I simply wanted to see her. There was a brief silence. Then Estelle said, "I'd like that." Something about the way she said it made me smile. 7? 7 works. We talked for another 20 minutes before finally saying goodnight. I put the phone down, and then it hit me. Dinner. She'd agreed to dinner. I had done it. I had won. For weeks, this was exactly what I'd been trying to accomplish. I grabbed my phone. Jenna. I should tell Jenna. You were wrong. I got the date. My thumb hovered over her name. Then I remembered how I'd actually asked Estelle. I hadn't been thinking about winning. I hadn't been looking for an opening. I'd been listening to her talk and imagining what it would be like to spend an evening with her. That was why I'd asked. I slowly lowered the phone. Had I asked her to dinner because of the challenge, or because I wanted to have dinner with her? I knew the answer, and suddenly I wished I didn't. I wanted Friday. I wanted to see her. I wanted to hear more of those ridiculous stories. I wanted to make her smile. Oh God. What was happening? This was wrong. This was going wrong. I looked at Jenna's name again. Calling her meant I'd won, and winning meant the game was over. That was supposed to be the whole point. Instead, for the first time since this stupid thing began, the thought of it ending frightened me. I locked my phone. I'd tell Jenna tomorrow. At least, that's what I told myself. But sitting there alone, I finally understood why Estelle had said yes. For once, I hadn't been trying to get a date with her. I'd simply wanted one. Friday came. I still hadn't told Jenna. I told myself I'd do it after dinner. One evening with Estelle, then I would figure out how to end this without hurting anyone. That lie lasted until Estelle walked into the restaurant. She smiled when she saw me, and every thought I'd rehearsed disappeared. Dinner lasted almost 4 hours. There was no effort anymore, no searching for the right thing to say. We talked about work, families, places we wanted to travel, things we'd done when we were younger. At some point, Estelle looked across the table at me. "You're different tonight. Different good or different bad? More relaxed. Maybe it's the wine," she smiled. "There, you almost did it again." "Did what?" "Turned it into a joke." I knew exactly what she meant. This time, I didn't hide. "I think I'm afraid of people seeing when I'm not okay." She became quiet, and somehow that one admission became another, then another. I told her more about my father. Not just that he'd lost his business, but what happened afterward. How I'd watched him become bitter. How terrified I was of ever becoming dependent on someone. "I think that's why I always need options," I admitted. "If I'm in control, nobody can pull the ground out from under me." Estelle listened, then she said quietly, "That sounds exhausting." I smiled. "It is." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "You don't always have to be in control with me." I looked at her hand. Something inside me gave way. There was a second dinner, then coffee, then another evening together. I stopped finding excuses for why. I just wanted to see her, and every time we met, Estelle seemed to find another part of me I'd spent years keeping hidden. The strange thing was, she wasn't forcing anything out of me. I wanted to tell her. She knew fears Jenna didn't know. She knew insecurities I'd never admitted to anyone. Not because Jenna had never cared enough to listen, because I'd never allowed myself to speak. With Estelle, I did. And somewhere during those evenings, I stopped feeling like the man who was trying to get inside her defenses. She was inside mine. Jenna noticed me pulling away. As far as Jenna knew, I was still trying to get the first date. At first, she still joked about the challenge. "So, still no date?" "Still working on it." That was the first time I directly lied. The next time she asked, I changed the subject. Then she stopped joking. "You've been distant. Work's been crazy." "Marcus." "What? What's going on?" "Nothing." She looked at me for a long time. I hated myself because she deserved the truth. But telling her the truth meant losing Estelle. And by then, that possibility frightened me more than I wanted to understand. A few weeks later, Estelle and I were walking back toward her apartment after dinner. Neither of us seemed in a hurry. We'd already passed her building once and kept walking before eventually turning back. When we reached the entrance, Estelle stopped. I stopped with her. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. She looked at me. I don't know what changed in that moment. Maybe nothing did. Maybe we'd simply reached the point where neither of us could pretend anymore. Her eyes stayed on mine. You know this isn't just friendship anymore. I felt something tighten inside me. Estelle, I don't know what's happening. She gave a small, nervous laugh. You're growing into me, Marcus. I didn't move. I think about you when you're not there. I wait for your messages. Something happens during my day and I think about telling you. She looked away for a second. I don't do this. Then she looked back at me. I don't understand how you got this close. Neither did I. I'd started all of this trying to find a way into her life. Now I couldn't imagine walking out of it. I don't get it, she whispered. I was losing whatever little control I had left. So I said the only thing that came to me. Then don't think. Her eyes stayed on mine. I leaned toward her, she leaned toward me, and we kissed. There was no hesitation after that. Her hand came against my chest, mine moved around her waist, and she came closer. Nothing about it felt like winning. Nothing about it felt like a challenge. It felt like something I'd been fighting for weeks finally becoming impossible to fight. Then I heard something behind us. Not my name, just a small sound. We pulled apart. Jenna was standing a few feet away. She wasn't angry, she just looked devastated. Tears were already running down her face. Jenna, she shook her head. This was supposed to be a challenge. Estelle looked at me. I felt the blood drain from my face. Jenna's voice broke. 1 date, Marcus. You were supposed to get 1 date. Estelle slowly stepped away from me. What? Neither of us answered. She looked at Jenna, then at me. What is she talking about? Jenna wiped at her face. I told him he couldn't do it. Couldn't do what? Get you to go out with him. Estelle stared at her. Jenna was crying harder now. It was stupid. I told him you wouldn't be interested in someone like him. He said he could get a date with you, so I challenged him. Estelle didn't move. Her face slowly changed as she understood. She looked at me. You approached me just to prove you could get a date with me? Estelle, was that why? I couldn't lie to her. Yes. The slap came hard across my face. I didn't move. Estelle stared at me for another second. Then both hands came up over her face. A broken sound escaped her. That hurt more than the slap. Estelle, please. She shook her head behind her hands. I reached toward her. She stepped back immediately, so I stopped. She lowered her hands. Her face was wet with tears. She looked at Jenna first, then at me. There was so much hurt in her eyes that I couldn't hold her gaze. She didn't ask for an explanation. She didn't scream. She simply turned and walked away. Estelle. She kept walking. I stood there watching her disappear. When I finally turned around, Jenna was still there. She looked at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. How could you do this to me? I had no answer. Because whatever Jenna had started with that stupid challenge, everything after Estelle said yes belonged to me. Jenna wiped her tears. Then she turned away too. I didn't follow her. Within a few seconds they were both gone, and I was standing there alone. I'd spent weeks telling myself I didn't know what was happening. Now I knew. I'd fallen in love with Estelle, and I'd understood it at exactly the moment I'd lost her. I didn't hear from either of them after that night. I sent Estelle one message, not an explanation, not an excuse, just an apology. I told her that what I'd done was wrong, that she hadn't imagined what happened between us, but I understood why she couldn't believe that anymore. She didn't reply. I didn't send another. Jenna didn't contact me either. Weeks became months. I worked, I ate when I remembered, I slept badly. Eventually I asked to work from home. It was easier. I didn't have to explain why I looked exhausted. I didn't have to pretend I was fine. For most of my life, pretending had been something I was good at. Somehow I'd lost the ability. Almost 3 months later, Jenna called. Can we meet? I agreed. We chose a cafe we'd gone to often when we were together. Jenna was already there when I arrived. The moment she saw me, something changed in her face. I knew why. I'd lost weight. I hadn't shaved properly in weeks. Even getting dressed and coming there had felt like more effort than it should have. You look... She stopped. Terrible? I wasn't going to say that. You were thinking it. She gave me a faint smile, but she kept looking at me. There was concern in her eyes. At the time, I don't think she understood what she was seeing. Maybe she thought I looked like a man destroyed by a breakup. And technically, she was right. She just didn't know which breakup. We ordered coffee. For the first few minutes, neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Jenna spoke. I've had a lot of time to think. I waited. I was furious with you. You should have been. I still am, a little. She looked down. But I can't pretend I had nothing to do with what happened. Jenna, I challenged you, Marcus. I encouraged it. I knew Estelle didn't know who you were. She shook her head. I thought it was harmless because I was so sure you'd fail. A small smile appeared. I thought you'd come back with your ego bruised and I'd make fun of you for 6 months. I smiled faintly. And then when you actually got the date, I thought you'd come back looking unbearably pleased with yourself. She looked at me. I never imagined any of this. Neither had I. There was a silence. Then Jenna started talking about us. The good parts. The weekend trips. The restaurants we loved. The stupid arguments. The night we'd driven almost 2 hours because she'd suddenly wanted cheesecake from one particular place. For the first time that afternoon, she laughed. I remembered all of it. I even laughed with her. And slowly I understood why she'd asked to meet. Her anger had worn down. She wasn't there only for closure. Some part of Jenna wanted us back. Then she became quiet. She was staring at me. What? You're different. I looked down at my coffee. 3 months will do that. No. Her voice softened. You're really different. Her eyes started filling. The Marcus I knew would have been doing something by now. Doing what? Trying to win me back. That word almost hurt. Win. He'd be making jokes, telling me we were both idiots, convincing me that one horrible mistake shouldn't erase everything we had. A tear slipped down her cheek. But you're not doing any of that. I couldn't answer. She searched my face, and then I watched her understand. Not all at once, slowly, painfully. Her lips parted. Oh, God. Jenna. She shook her head. More tears came. This isn't about me. I looked away. That was enough. Oh, God, Marcus. She covered her mouth for a moment. Then she whispered, You're in love with her. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't even look at her. Jenna sat there with tears running silently down her face. And suddenly I understood what she'd seen in me when I walked into that cafe. She must have thought some of that pain was for her. Now she knew it wasn't. She picked up her bag. Jenna. I started to stand. She shook her head. No anger, no accusation. She simply couldn't stay there anymore. She wiped her cheek, turned, and walked out without another word. I watched her through the window until she disappeared. She had come there believing that maybe the two of us had made a terrible mistake we could still repair. Instead, she discovered something far more painful. I was broken, just not because I'd lost her. 2 weeks later, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Estelle was standing there. For a second, I thought my mind was playing some cruel trick on me. She looked at me without speaking. Her eyes moved over my face, the beard I'd stopped bothering with, then back to my eyes. Hi. It took me a second to find my voice. Hi. I stepped aside. She came in. For a while, neither of us seemed to know what to say. Then Estelle looked at me. Jenna came to see me. I looked up. Jenna? She apologized, for her part in everything. What did you say? I told her whatever happened between you and her was your business. I wanted nothing to do with it. I nodded. And then? Estelle hesitated. She said she'd gone to see you because she thought maybe the two of you could fix things. I looked away. She said you were drowning. I gave a faint smile. That sounds dramatic. She said the same thing you're doing now. My smile disappeared. What else did she say? Estelle looked directly at me. That you weren't drowning because you'd lost her. I said nothing. She said she couldn't do anything for you because whatever was breaking you wasn't about her anymore. Estelle paused. She didn't ask me to forgive you. She just said that if I could bring myself to see you, maybe I should. I looked at her. And you came. Yes. A long silence passed between us. Then she asked quietly, Marcus, when did it become real? I looked at her. I don't know. Her expression hardened slightly. I came here for the truth, Marcus. That is the truth. I leaned forward. I wish I could give you a date, a conversation, some exact moment when the challenge disappeared. I can't. She looked down. I don't know which parts of you were real. All of them. She looked at me sharply. Even the beginning? No. I swallowed. The man who approached you at that party was trying to win. I didn't look away. He thought he understood women. He thought if he listened long enough, said the right things, found the right opening, eventually you'd say yes. Estelle's eyes were wet now. But you wouldn't let me stay that man. She said nothing. You kept asking questions, and every time I gave you some polished answer, you saw through it. I smiled faintly. You opened me up like no one else in my life ever could. My voice started to break. You know my fears, Estelle, my vulnerabilities, things I've never openly admitted to anyone, things I didn't even want to admit to myself. She looked at me. And somewhere along the way, I stopped telling you those things because I wanted you to like me. I took a breath. I told you because I wanted you to know me. Her eyes filled. I went looking for your vulnerabilities because I thought that was how I'd get inside your heart. I shook my head. I didn't realize you were getting inside mine. A long silence passed. When I was with you, I didn't have to be charming. I didn't have to have the answer. I didn't have to win. I didn't even have to pretend I wasn't afraid. I could barely get the last words out. Because in you, I saw my refuge. Estelle stared at me. Then she stood. For one horrible second, I thought she was leaving. Instead, she came closer. Her hand slipped beneath my chin and gently lifted my face. She studied me. Then her eyebrows pulled together. Why don't you shave? I blinked. What? This. Her fingers brushed my beard. Don't you go to the office anymore? A faint smile came to my face. Working from home now. And you don't go anywhere? I shrugged. Not much to see outside. Something changed in her eyes. She understood. Estelle released my chin. Go shave. What? Take a shower, shave, get dressed. I stared at her. Why? She picked up her bag. Because we're going for a walk. We walked without talking much. Neither of us tried to define what was happening. Eventually the streets opened toward the beach. The evening sun was already low. We sat beside each other and watched the light stretch across the water. I kept my hands to myself. I wasn't going to ask her what this meant. For once, I didn't need an answer. The sun moved closer to the horizon. Then I felt her shoulder against mine. I looked at her. She kept watching the water. Slowly, Estelle leaned into me. I stopped breathing. Then I put my arm around her. She rested her head against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. There was still trust to rebuild. There were wounds one sunset couldn't erase. But I understood something now that the man at that family party never could have understood. Love wasn't getting someone to choose you. It wasn't finding the right words, the right weakness, the right strategy. I held Estelle gently as the sun disappeared beyond the water. I'd started all of this believing I could win her. In the end, winning had nothing to do with it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to control what happened next. And with her resting against me, I didn't need to. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe to Forge Stories for a new story every day. And tell me in the comments, do you think love can find its way through even the worst beginning?